This conversation, Ant, was so I'm going to say lit, right? This is lit in Jesus's terms. And it was around marriage. It was around communion. It was around how do we operate and activate in connection. And I know we could jump in a bunch of places. Where are you feeling led first?
Well, I mean, first and foremost, it's always amazing to see for any of you that are looking for a group of people that are right in line with you. Every week, we don't have a specific topic that we go into it with. We don't study up on something. We don't
Yeah.
go in knowing something or preparing for something. It goes back to the statement that Tamra and I over coffee just a few years ago as we prepared for a business conference
Yeah.
and struggle of what is this? How do we prepare for this? Just felt the word come from heaven. You can't prepare for what you've been prepared for.
Yeah.
And what happens in that room is that it's a prepared group of individuals, and it's not always you and I,
Yeah.
as the founders, as
The host.
the
Yeah.
host, the whatever, the facilitators of the conversation. Sometimes everybody looks to us to kind of, but it's the amazing thing is at some point somebody may have a need, may have a journey they're going through, and somebody in that room, and it may not be us, has been prepared for that moment. So every moment you have is a preparing moment.
Mm.
Everything you go through is a preparing moment. And I preached on this last Sunday about Abraham when he sacrificed Isaac. We always, if you've been to Sunday school, you know the story. So we just fast forward to or Abraham gets told to sacrifice Isaac, his promised son, the beginning of the nation of Israel, the beginning of every promise God gave Abraham. He said, okay, I gave him to you after all these years, and you're old and you didn't think you're going to have him. Now I want you to go sacrifice him. And he's like, but in the very beginning of that statement, it says, after these things. So it talks about all the stuff that Abraham went through to prepare him for that test. In other words, the season of preparation had been going from the moment that God said, Abraham, come follow me, leave your father's things behind. I want you to go here.
Yeah.
So from that moment to that moment, the preparation was in place. The studying had begun, the understanding and the trust of who God was. There's several times that it says Abraham was considered righteous because he trusted God.
Yeah.
It didn't happen overnight, but it happened in a moment here, here, here. And as he began to trust him in those places, he began to really understand, I've been prepared for this test. It doesn't mean there wasn't some doubt, but his actions didn't dictate it. To his son, he was going through with what God told him to do, which probably spoke volumes on the other side of that. When they saw the ram, and he said, wow, my dad was willing to do anything for the Lord, and the Lord didn't want to sacrifice me. He just wanted to prove his trust, his
Yeah.
faith.
Yeah.
And we go through those preparation moments because somebody needs to see that we've been prepared, that God's prepared us. So I think, if you're looking for a group of people I encourage you got to get on these calls. You need to find out how to get connected with us every Wednesday, the Founders Table. It is just a group of people coming in together. It's not one voice, but it is one voice.
Yeah.
It's
I
not a
love when the
single.
new people come on and they're like, what is happening? Like everyone's
No.
in one accord. And so that's what we really have premised, even the nonprofit. That's what our whole conference was about. It was the number one like treasured note that people said to me. There was so many things about the last several conferences, since we've all kind of been in that cohort, that family experience, is that we operate as family. They've never seen such synchronicity within a group. And there's a lot of us. There's like 20 people. We roll deep everywhere, every city we go. Yeah. And it's wild because nobody even has to ask like, hey, what do you need? It's just a visual. We know who and what gifts and talents we each fill, and we don't have to I didn't have to tell Morgan to sing when she had a mic in her hand. That's just what she does,
Right.
And so the Spirit came over her and she shared her gift at the EYA conference we were just at, Embrace Your Ambition. And I love that we get to do it together as family, and that it's a representation of Christ, of the church, of the bride and the bridegroom, which is really this conversation associated to marriage. That was what we were talking about today.
Yeah. I think we talk about this a lot from when we were just at UA and our conference, and you find that a lot of people who are looking to be on a stage, you'll hear this a lot. I feel like I'm called to the stage. I've really been thinking that, like, why does everybody want to be on the stage? There's times I have zero desire to get up on that stage, but I know I have to. I know it's a moment. And I think that's the place when you don't desire it. That's when he can trust you with it. But I thought about this and I said, I think the reason everybody wants to be on the stage is for two reasons. They want to be seen and they want to be heard.
Mhm.
Too many times in this life, people feel like they're unseen and unheard, and they have something inside them they want to say. I'm here to tell anybody who feels that way today, you walk on your stage every time you walk in this life, whether it's in your home and whether it's in your job, whether it's at the grocery store, like you are on a stage. First and foremost, you need to know that your God sees you and your God hears you. Once you get that down, then you also understand that he's preparing stages for you, or you're being prepared for stages right here, right now. So stop searching for a microphone, stop searching for a stage, and be consistent in the stages you're already walking on. That's where you're going to get those moments of being seen and being heard, and it changes your whole trajectory. Now you're not chasing the stage, you are honed in on the stage. Like it, when you walk up there, it's not like, well, I got to do this to prove myself to these people. It's like, I'm here and I
Yeah.
don't need to prove myself to anybody. So just thinking about that, T, it's even in our own home,
Yeah.
talking about our marriages. How are we using that space? What we hear a lot of people is they feel like they're doing it separately. They're doing it alone. You find this in ministry a lot where they feel like they're doing it and their spouse is not coming alongside them. So
Yeah.
it pulls them and they're now chasing two different things.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things we talk about a lot that we've had to walk through to help realize that although we may be doing it differently, we're doing it together.
Completely. And I think you having the experience even in the military, right? We had a lot of people on the call today that have had experiences with their spouse or themselves being gone from the home. Similar to the person who works, longer hours than 9 to 5, who's always working weekends. My dad was in the military. I remember him leaving for long deployments, 9 months at a time, several times in a row. And then when he got out of the military, he ended up working in the car dealer industry, and he was working every holiday, every weekend. And so it constantly felt like my mom was doing it alone. But there is an element of like one accord that we have an opportunity to unlock when we are actually communicating about what are your roles, what are your strengths and weaknesses, how are we doing this together, and lifting one another up rather than creating our own stories of who's more important. We literally create hierarchy in our home. And even Christ himself is like, husbands submit to your wives, wives submit to your husbands. Like it is back and forth because there is a tandem. The only one who gets the head is the head of the church. That's Christ. And so we all have to be surrendered to him, to hear from him. And I think in connection to that, there was the concern of, we will see the strengths, we will see the vision sometimes of where we think our spouses could or should go. And we want to propel them into that excellence. We want to propel them onto that platform. We want to propel them into that like greatness of who God has created them to be. And a couple of things are inaccurate about that. We talked about appointing and anointing. They're two different things. And anointing generally happens before the appointing, because if you get appointed and you're not yet anointed, you're going to falter and fail.
Go
I
check
did that.
Saul.
Right? I did that. I was like, I can do this, right? I turned my microphone on for those of you who want to speak. I turned it on figuratively. This is not my microphone for Fit and Faith podcast, by the way, or the Founder Collective. But when I was in my 20s, I'm like, I want to be heard, seen, known, right? And I did that before I was equipped. I did that before I had wisdom. I had book knowledge, but book knowledge didn't serve me when it came to some of the interpersonal skills that I lacked. And so I just want people to understand, when you're propelling people in, first, is it time for them to be propelled there? And second, are you sure? Have you asked God that that's where they're meant to go? Or are you just assuming because that's where you want to go, that's where they're meant to go? Because it doesn't always mean that, even though we're doing ministry together, doesn't always mean that we're in the exact same zip code at the exact same time. And that's the story for me and my husband, at least in this season.